Meilah Daf Chof. Says the Mishnah, if one removes a beam or a stone from Hegdish possession and puts it in his house, he's Moyel, he's Oivar Meilah. Unless he's the Gizbar, he's the person that's responsible for Hegdish, and as long as it's under his Rishus, he's not Oivar Meilah. Until he gives it to his friend. Once he gives it to his friend, then he, the Gizbar, is Moyel, not his friend. If he built it into his house, as soon as he made some sort of change in the beam, in the stone, it becomes his, he's Moyel. But if he just put it in his house without changing it, he cemented it into the house to cover a skyline, for instance, then there is no Meilah until he benefits from it a Shava Pruta. If he sits underneath it or it protects his house for a Shava Pruta. According to Rav, that's because of the concept that Tolush, L'Soif Chibroi, is like Tolush. If it was detached and later on he attached it, it became attached to the ground, it has halacha like it's detached. According to Rish Lakish, it's only because it started off as Hegdish before he built his house. But if a person makes his house Hegdish after it's built, he says, my house is Hegdish, then there is no Meilah. If a person gives it to the Balon is the person in charge of the bathhouse, he gives money to the Balon, then immediately he is Moyel, because he already bought his right to use the bathhouse. As we said a couple days ago, you could combine the Hana of your friend and your eating, or your friend's eating and your Hana, they both combine for a Shava Pruta. That is, if you force your friend to eat, his eating and your eating, or his eating and your Hana, combine together, that you're over on Meilah, even if you had Hana today and your friend had Hana 3-5 years later. It's mitzdarif. According to Rav, if one uses his house as Avodah Zarah, the whole house becomes asur because it has a halacha of detached. And you can't prove anything from our Mishnah because our Mishnah is talking about Hegdish. And Hegdish, there's a concept of Hana Haniris Leinayim Asur Torah. Anything that is visible, you could see that one is benefiting from it, such as the person who closes his skylight with a stone from Hegdish, that's visible to all onlookers, and therefore that is what's asur. And you can't prove anything from the case that somebody lived or benefited from a house of Hegdish, that the halacha is that he was Oivra Meilah, because over there it's possible that the stones were Hegdish before they even built the house. And with that we finish the Perek Hanehen. Says the Mishnah, as we had the other day, here in Meilah we have the concept of Yesh Shliach L'Dvar Aveira. The sender is the one that is Moyel when he sends a messenger, and the messenger doesn't say Divri Arav, Divri Talmud, Divri Mishaimim. Of course, as the rest of the Torah over here, the sender is the one that is over. And therefore, if the shliach doesn't do exactly what he was told to do, then the shliach himself is the one that's Moyel. So if the owner or the sender says, go give so-and-so meat, and the shliach, instead of giving meat, gave liver, that's not exactly what he was told to do, because liver is not in the category of meat. It is some sort of meat, but that's not what people consider meat, and therefore the shliach is over. There's a machlokes between Rav Akiva and Chachamim in Nidarim. If a person says, I want to refrain from eating vegetables, from greens, does that include pumpkins and gourds? Chachamim say, since the messenger would make that phone call, or he would contact the sender and say, hey, there's no vegetables, would you like gourd? That shows that it's not in the same category. Rav Akiva says the exact opposite. Because somebody says, there are no vegetables, can I get you a pumpkin? That means pumpkin is in the category of vegetables. Otherwise, he wouldn't call. He wouldn't say, there are no vegetables, can I get you a drink? That would be in a different category. So, Meilah, according to Rav Chizda, our Mishnah cannot go according to Rav Akiva, says Rav Chizda, because he says that anything that the shliach is going to ask the sender, is this included in the category? That is in the same category. And we're saying that if meat and liver is not in the same category. Abai says no. You can't prove anything from Nidarim. Nidarim is very broad. When somebody says vegetables, he means all vegetables. But when a person sends somebody to buy something, he's very specific. He wants that particular item. He wants meat, and he does not want you to bring or give liver. According to Rabbi Akiva, if somebody made a neder on a day that he was doing bloodletting, so in his neder he said, I'm not going to eat meat, he doesn't include fish and chicken because that is not necessary for his neder, because that's not healthy for somebody that lets blood. And therefore, his mind wasn't on the chicken and the fish, and it's not included in his neder. And the same thing would be if somebody has an eye ache, he'd be allowed to eat fish, but he'd be usher to eat the head of an animal and the legs of the animal, even though they're not real meat, they're very weak, and the trachea, liver, because that's something that the shliach would ask permission to exchange. Instead of meat, can I buy you a trachea, etc. According to Reb Shimon Gamliel, beautiful. When it comes to innards, he uses a very strong lashon. He says whoever eats innards is not human. And Taisus explains what he means to say is that if somebody were to buy, for instance, liver, and then he came home and he found out that was spoiled, he can't get his money back. Why? Because the person selling it will say, I thought you're buying it to feed your dog. It's not for human consumption. Liver is not food that human beings eat. That's what Reb Shimon Gamliel says. If a shliach says, the mishaleach tells the shliach, go give my guest one piece, and the shliach tells his guest, take 2 pieces, and the guest take 3 pieces, each and every one are mile. The sender is mile because he said to give 1 piece, and the shliach listened to him, and yesh shliach l'dvar, and the sender is the one that's chayav. The shliach told the people to eat 2 pieces, and they listened to the shliach, so the shliach is over because yesh shliach l'dvar. And finally, the guest, which they took an extra piece, for that extra piece, they're also mile. But if he just, and we have to say, the Gemara says, that the shliach, he said 2 sentences. He said, take 1 piece, so that 1 piece was for the sender, and then he said, in addition to that, take another piece. But if he just threw out, he said, take 2 pieces, that would be a suffix, because we have a shaila as well. If a sender says, buy me a half a kur, and the shliach bought a full kur, so a half is a half included in 1. Perhaps he meant only 1 and not a half. Or you could say, no, he meant anything up to 1. The same shaila would be here. Since the shliach said, the mishaleach said, give my guest 1 piece, is 1 included in 2 pieces, like the shliach said? Or perhaps no, he said only 1, and since you said 2, I don't want any at all. Have a wonderful day.